filed lawsuits everywhere before the Court of Appeals, where he is a Court of Appeals judge. He actually won before his own court, the Court of Appeals, although he was not on the panel. The Supreme Court basically said that 5,000 are subject to Jefferson Griffin's ridiculous challenge after losing, and those were military votes. Then it went to the Supreme Court very recently. Last week, there was a mixed ruling there. You see, Jefferson Griffin wanted to throw out 65,000 votes.
What happens when a Republican loses a Supreme Court race fair and square? Apparently, they try to change the rules after the game is over. Justice Allison Riggs won her seat on North Carolina's highest court, but her opponent decided democracy was optional. Now 5,000 military and overseas voters might have their ballots thrown out unless they jump through new hoops. Imagine sending your vote from a military base overseas only to have some sore loser try to erase it. This isn't just about one court seat, it's the GOP's test run for 2024. Scary stuff, right? Let me explain exactly how their plan blew up in their faces. Hey, do us a favor. Hit that subscribe button. We know you want to. Go ahead, we'll wait. Alright, appreciate it. Now back to the video. Let's dive into Jefferson Griffin's legal playbook, because it's quite the page turner of desperation. When his North Carolina Supreme Court dreams came crashing down, Griffin didn't just throw a regular tantrum, he launched a full-blown legal assault that would make even the sorest losers blush. His strategy? Cherry pick, which votes to challenge based on surprise, surprise, where Democrats lived. Griffin's team zeroed in on counties with higher concentrations of Democratic voters. How convenient. It's like saying, I only want to recount the ballots in neighborhoods where people have Biden bumper stickers.
That right there was a rally in Raleigh, North Carolina for Justice Allison Riggs. This was the race back in November of 2024 that Justice Riggs, pro-democracy, Democratic judge running as a Democrat, won. She won the second recount. But you see, the MAGA Republican Jefferson Griffin wouldn't take the fact that he lost as a loss.
This selective targeting wasn't just fishy, it raised serious equal protection concerns that echoed the historic Bush versus Gore case from 2000. Remember that mess? Same energy, different century. The whole charade wasn't about finding actual fraud. It was about invalidating votes that didn't have Griffin's name checked. When you only question the ballots in blue areas, you're not wearing a detective hat. You're sporting a partisan baseball cap with the bill pulled way down over your eyes. One of Griffin's favorite complaints targeted overseas and military ballots. His team suddenly discovered inconsistencies in voter ID requirements for these ballots. The very same ballots that had been counted using identical methods for years without anyone batting an eye. What changed? Oh right, Griffin lost. Funny how these problems only materialize when the vote count doesn't go your way. Justice Allison Riggs, who actually won the election, pointed out the dangerous precedent this could set.
There's a recent update that it may be a less amount than those 5,000 that are actually going to be subject to the Supreme Court's ruling. Heard a few different things, but somewhere in the range of, I don't think we should take anything for granted where you have a MAGA Republican Congress member, or MAGA Republican justice and MAGA Republican people who are all very focused on trying to take this election where they lost. 1,600 or 1,675 votes that are now subject to the Supreme Court's ruling.
Imagine a world where any sore loser could challenge results by demanding post-election rule changes. It's like losing a basketball game and then insisting that three-pointers should actually count as 2 points, but only the ones your opponent made. The most telling part of this saga was Judge Toby Hampson's blistering dissent. He wrote, "To accept Griffin's indiscriminate efforts to call into doubt the votes of tens of thousands of otherwise eligible voters without showing any challenged voter was disqualified under existing law from voting is to elevate speculation and surmise over evidence and reason. In non-judge speak, this dude's got nothing but hurt feelings and wild theories." Even more revealing was Justice Anita Earls' criticism of the Republican majority on the court for choosing to intervene in an unprecedented way. She blasted their indulgence of this sort of fact-free post-election gamesmanship. When a sitting justice uses phrases like fact-free, you know things have gone off the rails. While the North Carolina Supreme Court ultimately rejected most of Griffin's claims, they did rule on the overseas ballots issue. That intervention, even if it didn't flip the result, planted a dangerous seed for future elections election challenges. It's like giving a toddler a cookie after a tantrum. You might think you've solved today's problem, but tomorrow's grocery store meltdown is now pre-programmed.
Justice Riggs won. That's the story. There should be someone conceding, the loser, in this case, Jefferson Griffin, with dignity, but that's not what he did. People did. They voted for you. And this has been a long, arduous, expensive process for you. So where are we right now?
I need folks to know, one, that my opponent is not accepting that. He wants more voters impacted, more voters potentially disenfranchised.
Here's the truly frightening part. This isn't just happening in North Carolina. It's becoming the Republicans' go-to move nationwide when elections don't break their way. Lose by a small margin, claim fraud, challenge specific neighborhoods, suddenly find problems with voting machines. It's a playbook getting more dog-eared with each passing election cycle. So why did Griffin refuse to concede despite losing multiple recounts? Because this isn't about one judge's seat on one state Supreme Court. It's a test run, a dress rehearsal for bigger elections. They're pushing boundaries, testing defenses, seeing just how far they can stretch the legal system before it snaps back, or worse, breaks entirely. And the GOP is treating our electoral system like it's one of those how many licks to get to the center of a Tootsie Pop commercials. Except instead of candy, they're trying to find out how many baseless legal challenges it takes to erode public trust in elections. Griffin's temper tantrum isn't just embarrassing. It's dangerous in ways that extend far beyond North Carolina.
A cure process going underway to chase and cure only 1,700 ballots it's better in terms of the number of voters potentially disenfranchised. They can go and look at the election laws that were on the books as of election day, the rules and the laws that people relied on and the rules they followed. And so I am fighting tooth and nail. One, because one voter disenfranchised is too many. We enjoy the fundamental right to vote.
It adds to the growing pile of conspiracy theories and mistrust that's already weakening our democracy. When you teach voters that elections are only legitimate when your team wins, you're not playing politics anymore. You're playing with fire. What makes this particularly rich is how predictable the pattern has become. Republican loses close race. Republican claims fraud. Republican files lawsuits targeting Democratic areas. Republican provides zero evidence of actual fraud. Courts eventually reject most claims. Republican base becomes more convinced the system is rigged. Rinse and repeat for the next election. The selective targeting operation by Griffin's team is like watching a bloodhound that's mysteriously lost its sense of smell whenever it crosses into Republican territory. Isn't it fascinating how these alleged voting problems only seem to exist where Democrats cast their ballots? It's election integrity whack-a-mole, except they've decided beforehand which holes they'll be whacking. The geographical pattern of Griffin's challenges reveals more than any legal brief could. When you map out which ballots his team wanted thrown out, you're basically looking at a heat map of Democratic voters in North Carolina. What are the odds that election irregularities would be so politically savvy? These ballot problems apparently know exactly which neighborhoods to avoid, never wandering into GOP strongholds. Talk about politically conscious voter fraud. The court noticed this transparent game too. While reviewing Griffin's claims, several judges pointed out that his team's laser focus on Democratic-leaning areas undermined their supposed concern for election integrity. When asked why they weren't investigating all counties with similar ballot procedures, Griffin's team offered explanations that were about as convincing as a toddler claiming the dog ate their vegetables. This kind of selective targeting doesn't just fail the smell test, it stinks worse than month-old fish. If you're genuinely concerned about ballot security, wouldn't you look everywhere using consistent standards? Instead, Griffin's operation resembled someone who's convinced their car was stolen, but only looks for it on streets where they don't like the neighbor. The troubling development in this mess is the North Carolina Supreme Court's ruling on overseas and military ballots. While they rejected most of Griffin's ridiculous claims, they unfortunately bought into his argument about these specific ballots. The court decided that overseas and military voters needed to cure their ballots within a very tight time frame, essentially creating a new hurdle for people serving our country abroad. Justice Riggs highlighted exactly why this ruling is so dangerous, warning it sets a precedent that could be used to reverse engineer elections in the future. Think about that phrase for a second. Reverse engineer elections. That's not fixing problems, that's creating a toolkit for losers to retroactively change results they don't like. It's like giving sore losers a time machine and a rule book they can edit after the game ends. Military personnel voting from overseas deserve better than having their ballots become political footballs. These are literally people risking their lives for our democracy, while politicians back home try to undermine that very democracy. The irony would be delicious if it weren't so disturbing. The ruling essentially tells these voters, thanks for your service, but we've decided to change the rules after you already voted. It's the electoral equivalent of moving the goalposts after the field goal has already gone through the uprights, and it disproportionately affects certain groups of voters, a classic ingredient in the recipe for voter suppression. What Griffin's team accomplished, even while losing most of their case, was to establish a dangerous precedent. Future candidates can now point to this ruling and say, see, the North Carolina Supreme Court agreed that we can challenge these kinds of ballots. It's like giving a burglar the keys to your house, but feeling relieved because they only stole your silverware. They still know how to get in next time. The David versus Goliath narrative here is unmistakable. Justice Riggs isn't just fighting for her rightfully earned seat. She's standing up against a machine that's trying to manipulate the entire electoral system. And the manipulation isn't even subtle. Griffin's team basically walked into court wearing t-shirts saying, "We only question Democratic votes," and expected to be taken seriously. What's particularly rich about this whole situation is how selective their concern for election integrity really is. These same folks who are now obsessed with ballot security were mysteriously silent in counties where Republicans won. Their election radar only seems to activate in zip codes that lean left. It's like claiming to be a health inspector, but only examining restaurants where you don't like the chef. When the dust settles, the most important takeaway isn't just that Griffin lost most of his challenges, it's that this kind of targeted attack on votes is becoming normalized. Each unsuccessful attempt still plants seeds of doubt and establishes precedents that can be exploited later. Every failed lawsuit still provides a blueprint for future effort. While North Carolina shows us the GOP's failed attempt to steal one court seat, over in Wisconsin, Republicans just had their most expensive panic attack ever. Would you believe the Republican Party and their billionaire buddy Elon Musk flushed millions down the toilet trying to buy a Supreme Court seat, only to watch it blow up in their faces spectacularly? The Wisconsin Supreme Court race wasn't just any judicial contest, it became the most expensive court battle in American history. Think about that for a second. Not the most expensive in Wisconsin history, not even the decade, but in the entire history of the United States. That's like going to a yard sale and accidentally starting a bidding war that ends up costing more than the house itself. Republicans threw so much cash at this race, you'd think they were trying to build a gold-plated courthouse. And speaking of money, guess who decided to play political sugar daddy? None other than our favorite attention-seeking billionaire, Elon Musk, the man who can't decide if he's a tech genius or just that weird uncle who posts too much online, opened up his wallet and dumped millions into the race. Musk's direct intervention wasn't just about writing checks. He leveraged his massive social media platform to support conservative candidate Brad Schimmel. It's like watching someone use a rocket launcher to win a water balloon fight. Completely over the top, and yet somehow still ineffective. The GOP and their wealthy friends were so confident they'd win this thing. They had the cash advantage, the Musk advantage, the social media advantage. Everything except for, actual voter support. When the votes were counted, liberal candidate Susan Crawford walked away with the victory, delivering a gut punch to Republicans who thought this seat was in the bag. It's like watching someone spend their life savings on lottery tickets only to drop the winning ticket in a puddle. Crawford's victory wasn't just any win. It fundamentally shifted the court's ideological balance, giving liberals control of Wisconsin's highest court. This is massive. The court will likely weigh in on Wisconsin's 1849 abortion ban. Yes, a law older than the light bulb, plus crucial decisions on voting rights and redistricting in this battleground state. No wonder Republicans were willing to break the bank, trying to keep control. The parallels between Wisconsin and North Carolina couldn't be clearer. In both states, Republicans are watching their iron grip on state courts slip away like sand through their fingers. The difference? In Wisconsin, they couldn't even cheat after losing. They just had to sit there and watch their millions of dollars turn into confetti while Democrats celebrated. Wisconsin shows us something important. When citizens actually get to cast their votes freely, they often choose judges who protect rights rather than restrict them. It's almost like people enjoy having rights. Who knew? The election also became a referendum on Trump's second term, with his preferred candidate taking a beating despite the former president's endorsement. That's gotta sting. What's really got Republicans breaking out in hives is that they lost despite outspending Democrats by ridiculous margins. Their entire judicial takeover strategy, pour in dark money, get corporate-friendly judges, and secure favorable rulings for decades, crashing down around them. It turns out that voters can sometimes see through the cash tsunami and make decisions based on actual issues. Shocking concept, I know. The Republican response to these losses is painfully predictable. When they win elections, the system is perfect, fair, and should never be questioned. When they lose, suddenly there's fraud lurking behind every voting booth. It's like a toddler who thinks the game is only fair when they're winning. This double standard would be funny if it weren't undermining democracy itself. These state Supreme Court races fly under the radar for most Americans, but they're arguably more important to your daily life than many national contests. These courts will decide whether your state enforces century-old abortion bans, whether your vote counts in the next election, and whether your congressional district looks like a normal shape or a piece of abstract art drawn by a politician on a power trip. No wonder Republicans fight so dirty. These courts can give them what voters won't. The Wisconsin race also put a spotlight on something critical: how wealthy individuals like Musk are trying to buy justice one court seat at a time. When billionaires can dump unlimited cash into judicial races, we're not selecting judges anymore. We're holding auctions, and the bidders aren't interested in justice. They're interested in judges who will rule in their favor when their businesses end up in court. In her own words, Justice Riggs reminds us that one voter disenfranchised is too many. This isn't just about her keeping her seat. It's about protecting every American's fundamental right to vote, especially those serving in our military overseas. The really scary part, as Riggs warned, if this happens here, we will not be able to contain it. These challenges could spread like a political virus across America, letting sore losers everywhere try to undo elections they don't like. Want to help? Riggs is calling for both legal and grassroots support. Head to riggs4ourcourts.com to sign up for updates, because democracy only works when we all agree that votes actually matter.